Amazing transformation. Exposed racist cop arrests black FBI agent. Jury awards 2.3 men for justice. Night had fallen over Maplewood, Ohio, as Jordan Rivers locked up his desk after another grueling day in the FBI. A persistent heaviness clung to him, a sense of urgency woven through guilt and anger. Fighting crime and seeking justice had been his life's devotion, yet here he was, an African-American agent wrongfully arrested by an officer notorious for racism, the absurdity twisted in his gut. A man who had built his life around integrity taken down by the very system he worked to uphold. A phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of his ailing mother. Her fragile health reminded him of the stakes involved. Every moment spent consumed by this narrative felt like time snatched from her. As he sat in the back of the police cruiser, handcuffed, a wave of disbelief surged through him. This was Hank Wilkins, a man who had made a career out of intimidation, who personified the prejudices he fought against each day. The officer barked orders, enthusiasm seeping from his every word as if the mere act of detaining Jordan validated his existence. But for Jordan, this was not only humiliation, it was a revelation. Here he stood, a victim of the very biases he once tirelessly combated, feeling the weight of systemic racism crush his spirit. Had he battled a tide only to become entangled in it? The media buzzed with sensational stories. His arrest could become a rallying point against police misconduct or merely another headline. But what if he chose silence? The allure of preserving his career tempted him like quicksand. The call from his mother, "Stand up for truth, my son," echoed in his mind, igniting the resolve within him. Each breath drew tighter in his chest, fighting the conflict swirling in his core. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Weeks blurred into a relentless cycle of tension and uncertainty. The injustice gnawed at him, while whispers of a settlement floated in the air, an enticing offer for his silence. Balancing his ambitions against the trauma of his circumstances left him teetering on a razor's edge. He envisioned handing over the chaos and resentment for a clean break, but such a deal felt like betrayal itself. Each denial of his truth spiraled deeper into a crisis of identity. Was he a coward, choosing safety, or a fool embracing danger? In the stillness of a hospital room, he sat beside his mother, her breath shallow, her voice steady as she recounted her own battles against racial injustice. A flicker ignited within him. Her legacy commanded him to act. Then came the moment. An unexpected ally emerged. A retired judge ready to testify against the corruption knitted into the department. Already the stakes had morphed into a community issue, but the weight of his purpose was likely to fall onto his shoulders alone. An inevitable dread seeped into his bones. If he took that stand, what consequences awaited him? The trial loomed ahead, hanging over him like storm clouds ready to burst. Jordan felt the imminent pressure peak, a sensation raw yet familiar, a gathering storm of fear, pride, and determination coiling within him. The thunderous prospect of standing up to Wilkins, the man who embodied everything that oppressed him, was a formidable challenge. He craved to transform this nightmare into redemption, but what if he faltered? What if the truth crumbled under the weight of his own doubts, collapsing into an abyss of unanswered questions? The path ahead lay dark and unwritten, only whispers predicting the journey to justice. And thus he waited, heart racing, knowing that every choice from here would hold consequences far beyond himself. The morning sun spilled through the hospital window, casting long shadows across the floor, illuminating the quiet determination on Jordan's face. Today was the day he would decide whether to stand and fight or retreat for safety. His mother lay there, frail yet strong, a testament to resilience he could not ignore. He had let her strength fuel his ambition throughout his career, Now it needed to ignite a fire within him to confront the dark reality he faced. Arriving back at the FBI office felt surreal. The air buzzed with the insistent hum of activity, yet it felt strangely distant to him. Colleagues exchanged pleasantries, but their gestures felt insipid compared to the turmoil raging inside him. His name, once synonymous with integrity and commitment, now felt tainted. As whispers of the incident spread like wildfire, he froze in place, his heart thunderous. Would he be seen as the victim or an enemy of the department that had shaped his life? He slipped into his office, the familiar smell of old paperwork and coffee mingling with tension seeping from his core. Today, he had to make a choice, and uncertainty slid through him like a knife. The allure of a quick settlement loomed large, a path to regain a semblance of normalcy. Yet it felt like a betrayal to every person he had worked beside, every victim he had championed. Silence meant complicity in the very prejudice that had pulled him into this grim reality. As he sat at his desk, the weight of the case file before him felt like the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Images of Hank Wilkins' cruel smile flickered through his mind, and bitterness dripped into his resolve. It was time to confront that ghost, to pull his fear into the light and wrestle it into submission. But how could he reconcile this rage with the vulnerability of his identity? Would he be seen as a hero or merely a man exposing his pain? The clock ticked steadily in the background, and in that thick atmosphere clarity struck like a sudden clap of thunder. Perhaps the truth was his weapon. Instead of succumbing to self-doubt or fear of backlash, maybe he could use this moment as a catalyst for change, not just for himself but for those who felt voiceless. A small flurry of courage bolted through him, intertwining with the fear that had weighed him down for too long. An idea unfolded. What if he documented his experience, offering insight into the robust machinery of injustice that too often went unnoticed? With the right narrative, he could expose the systemic failures and force a conversation that spiraled beyond his singular encounter. It felt as though his purpose was crystallizing before his eyes, revealing a multifaceted mission. Before he could question it further, he found himself messaging an old colleague, a journalist he once worked with, someone passionate about uncovering hidden truths. The prospect of their collaboration ignited something in him. Perhaps it was the hope that he could reconstruct his narrative on his terms, ensure his voice was heard not as the victim, but as an architect of change. It was a gamble, but if he truly wanted to redeem his reputation, it was a chance he needed to take. In the following hour, as he paced through his office, a sense of urgency drummed through him. He borrowed strength from his mother's battles and prepped himself for a confrontation with Wilkins, not merely in the courtroom, but in the world. He needed to prove to everyone, especially to himself, that he could be both the messenger and the message. Then the realization hit. The trial would not just serve as a platform to challenge Wilkins, but could also crystallize a narrative that illuminated broader systemic issues. How could he prepare for a fight that could transcend his personal struggles into something larger? The questions loomed as he approached the deadline of his decisions. It was nearly time for the meeting with the journalist. He steeled himself for what lay ahead, understanding the impending conversation could spiral his story in unexpected directions. Would he find the strength to not only expose the truth, but also flourish in the aftermath? The time had come to face the insecurities, to articulate his truth into existence and regain control over a life that had unraveled in ways he never imagined. And as he opened the door to meet his ally, he felt the dawning realization that every battle fought could calibrate his identity, shaping him into an emblem of resilience if only he could find the courage to endure. Jordan stepped into the bustling cafe, the pungent aroma of coffee swirling around him, grounding his tumultuous thoughts. He hadn't realized how much he had needed to escape the sterile walls of the FBI office, where every whisper felt like a judgment. Today he was to meet Sophia, a journalist whose work had carved out a niche in exposing police misconduct. The stakes had never felt higher, but he was acutely aware that their conversation could shape the narrative of his recent ordeal. As he approached a corner table, he caught sight of Sophia, her eyes keen and engaged, already diving into her notepad. She embodied determination, a mirror to the resolve he felt awakening within himself. Settling down across from her, Jordan felt the familiar anxiety begin to ebb, drawn away by the urgency of their shared purpose. This wasn't just about him anymore. It had become a quest to reveal a deeper, insidious truth. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice," he said, trying to mask the tremor in his voice with a semblance of professionalism. "Not at all," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "I recognize a turning point when I see one. Let's cut straight to the chase. What do you want to say?" His thoughts jumbled. He had rehearsed this countless times in his mind. "I want to share my experience not just as a victim but as someone who has witnessed the systemic prejudices that perpetuate fear. It's bigger than me." Sophia jotted notes, her pen dancing furiously. "Good. You having the courage to speak out can shift perspectives. Tell me more." As he delineated the series of events leading to his dismissal, Jordan found clarity in the chaos. The memories of incredulity, anger, and isolation transformed into words that defined his battle. Each instance brought forth the pressures institutions placed on individuals like him. Pressure to conform, pressure to remain silent. The story was not merely about one incident. It resonated with countless others who had worn the cloak of oppression in silence. Sophia leaned in, her expression serious. "We're not just documenting an incident, we're documenting a culture. Are you prepared for the fallout? Once your voice is out there, there's no taking it back." The weight of her words settled heavily on his shoulders. He was aware that truth often bore a heavy price and vulnerability would draw fierce scrutiny. "I've thought about that," he answered earnestly. "But I can't add to the silence anymore. If it costs me, so be it. The message transcends my individual pain." While she outlined the potential route of their collaboration, interviews, public engagement, leveraging social media, Jordan's mind drifted toward the reaction of his colleagues. Would they see the resolve in his choice, or would they merely judge him for airing dirty laundry? Yet he understood this internal conflict was part of growth, an evolution he could no longer shy away from. After finishing their discussion, he felt invigorated. More than words, he was beginning to forge a new identity, one in which fear didn't dictate his actions. With each thoughtful strategy they devised, he could envision the broadening conversation unfolding, peeling back layers of unaccountability in law enforcement. As he left the cafe, the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow on him, yet a chill ran down his spine at the thought of confronting Wilkins. With every step, he felt the urgency intensifying, a countdown to catalyst change gripping him tighter. He had chosen a path of confrontation. Now he could either back down or rise as a resilient voice. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Sophia, underscoring their need for precise timing in the exposé. The weight of expectation settled anew. Anticipation mingled with anxiety as he glanced at the text. Would his decision to embrace the truth galvanize others, or would it deepen the divide, exposing him to further backlash? Jordan felt the knot in his stomach tighten. It was only a matter of time before action had to accompany these convictions. The next set of challenges awaited him. The initial meeting with Wilkins and a ticking clock before Sophia's piece went public. But as determination coursed through him, he reminded himself that every step forward was a step toward rewriting his narrative. He quickened his pace, ready to confront not just Wilkins, but the fear that had shackled him for far too long. The moment was nearing when he would have to face his adversary directly. The confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon. Would he remain steadfast, or falter under the pressure? The time to stand was coming, and with it, the possibility of becoming more than just a casualty of circumstance. The sound of his shoes clicking against the pavement echoed in rhythm with the rapid beat of his heart. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if gravity were pulling on the weight of every decision he had made thus far. The prospect of confronting Wilkins loomed like a dark cloud, but there was no denying the flicker of something stronger within him. Resolve. He reached the office building, a monolith of glass and steel that seemed to mock him with its imposing stature. Jordan inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air fill his lungs, a fleeting moment of calm before the storm. Today's meeting wouldn't just be another exchange of words. It was a declaration that would rattle the foundations of his career. His thoughts darted back to his discussions with Sophia. They had meticulously crafted a narrative meant to peel back layers of systemic corruption. Wilkins had to know what was coming, and Jordan had to brace himself for the inevitable pushback. The thought of airing out dirty laundry felt less daunting now that he understood the significance of transparency. As he stepped into the office, the fluorescent lights buzzed, casting an unforgiving glow that illuminated every face turned toward him. He nodded to a few colleagues, though he could sense their scrutiny lingering. Whispers carried like an undercurrent, speculations about his courage or foolishness he couldn't tell. Each one felt like a judgment, another weight on his shoulders. The conference room was stark and sterile, lending an air of formality to the proceedings about to unfold. Jordan took a seat at the table, the surface smooth and cold, a stark contrast to the turbulence inside him. His pulse quickened as Wilkins entered, exuding confidence, but the glint in his eyes revealed a flicker of apprehension. This time, Jordan would not be an intimidated observer. "Jordan," Wilkins said, his voice a blend of condescension and feigned concern. "I heard you've been speaking with the press. Is there anything you'd like to discuss?" The game was on. "Yes, there is," Jordan replied, his voice steady, betraying none of his inner turmoil. "I think it's time we address the systemic issues plaguing our department." The words hung in the air, an electric charge that sizzled with tension. Wilkins straightened, the confidence fading from his demeanor. "I think you're mistaken. There's no systemic issue worth discussing. What's happening is merely a reflection of personal failures, miscommunication, lack of understanding." Jordan felt a surge of adrenaline, a stark clarity that ignited his determination. "Is that what you believe? Because I've seen firsthand how fear and prejudice influence behavior, not just from the officers, but within the very walls of this institution. I can't remain silent while we uphold a culture of silence." Wilkins's posture shifted, revealing the undercurrent of hostility that lurked beneath his polished facade. "You're walking a dangerous line, Jordan." That warning rattled through Jordan, but it didn't intimidate him. It set him alight with urgency. What's dangerous is pretending that everything is fine. We owe it to ourselves to confront these issues head-on, not just for us, but for everyone who has faced the truth. As he spoke, an almost palpable tension filled the room. Jordan could feel the weight of his colleagues' gazes, many of whom had once dismissed him as just another agent. "Let's not forget your position here," Wilkins countered, trying to regain control. "This isn't just about you. This is the reputation of the entire Bureau." And suddenly, it clicked. The realization that Jordan wasn't merely defending himself, but embarking on a broader mission to redefine justice. "I'm afraid the reputation has already been compromised by allowing this culture to persist," he said, a spark igniting in his chest. "I'm advocating for change, something we should all want." Wilkins's expression darkened, but Jordan sensed something deeper, a crack in the armor that was the agency's institutional loyalty. As the conversation like a game of chess unfolded, every move he made brought a surprising clarity to his own intentions. In standing his ground, he wasn't just fighting for his narrative. He was weaving new fabric for the future he envisioned. Inside him, a profound shift was happening. This confrontation wasn't merely about confronting Wilkins, it was about summoning his latent strength. The stakes had escalated dramatically, and Jordan emerged from this encounter not simply seeking justice for himself, but actively claiming his power to create change. As he stood to leave, he caught Wilkins' eyes with unwavering intensity. "When the time comes, I won't be silent. This chapter isn't just for me, but for everyone who has been rendered voiceless." With resolve echoing in his heart, he strode out of the room, each footfall a rhythm of transformation. He had embarked upon something greater than himself, something that could ripple through the agency and beyond. The moment of truth had arrived, but rather than fear, Jordan felt empowerment coursing through him. He knew the tide was turning, but would he be able to sustain his momentum as the stakes soared? In the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, his phone buzzed again. A message from Sophia. "A critical development in the article. We need to strategize immediately." Jordan's heart raced anew. The next phase of his fight was upon him, a step further into uncharted territory where he would define his legacy. What new revelations awaited in the urgency of his journey? Jordan's heartbeat echoed in his ears as he walked away from the conference room, the weight of his recent confrontation clinging to him like a thick fog. Now, with Sophia's pressing message, there was no time to wallow in whatever adrenaline-induced euphoria might have come from standing up to Wilkins. He tapped his phone with urgency, typing a quick response to her and then pocketing the device. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, matching his racing thoughts. The air tasted different, charged with possibility and trepidation. Jordan could almost see the layers of the narrative he was weaving, every thread intertwining with the revelations he and Sophia were about to unfold. He quickened his pace to the nearest cafe, the warmth and buzz inside calling to him as a refuge from the storm that brewed not just outside, but within his mind. As he entered, the barista flashed a friendly smile, but Jordan barely registered it. His thoughts were spiraling. The implications of his meeting with Wilkins loomed large. Would those who once doubted him begin to see him differently? Would they support the call for change or align more solidly with the status quo? Each face he passed felt like a question mark, a speculation on how the winds were shifting within their ranks. He ordered a coffee, channeling the unease into fuel for his upcoming strategy session. Jordan settled into a small table, his laptop open in front of him, poised for action. As he waited for Sophia, he reviewed notes on systemic corruption, the articles they had drafted together, and the specific instances of bias that made for compelling evidence. Each bullet point served as a reminder of both the necessity and gravity of their mission. What started as a personal fight against his own fears and insecurities had morphed into a broader struggle against an entrenched culture of silence within their agency. It was overwhelming yet galvanizing. The bell jingled as Sophia entered, her presence igniting a spark of determination in him. With a mind as sharp as her strategic instincts, she wasted no time diving into their discussions. "Jordan, we have to ensure the narrative highlights the systemic nature of the issues. It's not just the actions of a few rogue officers, it's about institutional failure." "Exactly," he replied, invigorated by her perspective. Wilkins' dismissal of this as personal failure only further illustrates the point. It's not just about me standing up to him, but showing how deeply embedded these problems are. Sophia nodded, her brow furrowed as she scribbled notes. "We need to gather testimonies, voices from the inside to bolster your claims, perhaps some who have also been too frightened to speak out until now. Their stories can lend authenticity and weight to our argument." Every moment spent with her felt like chiseling away at a stone statue, revealing the work of art that lay underneath. Jordan followed her lead, brainstorming, analyzing each detail, and magnifying their credibility. But beneath their professional camaraderie flickered unease. As they strategized, he couldn't shake the fear of backlash. What if Wilkins retaliated? What if allies turned to foes? Jordan's internal conflict simmered just below the surface, but he pressed on, grateful for Sophia's unwavering support. "We can do this," she reiterated, almost sensing his hesitation. "The agency needs reform, and you're in a unique position to lead that change. You've already shown courage today. Let that drive you." Her words ignited a fire within him, fueling his resolve. He realized this was more than a singular fight. It was a quest that would define who he was becoming. Each paragraph, each exposed detail, unraveled the layers of his fears and showcased how far he'd come. But in the midst of burgeoning confidence, a lingering question echoed in his mind. Could he also inspire others to confront their fears? As Sophia packed her materials, her phone pinged, breaking through his reverie. Glancing at a screen filled with news headlines, she paled. "Jordan, there's been a leak. Someone's posted details about our article online. They're framing it as a personal attack." The gravity of the situation pulled the wind from his sails. How? He wondered aloud, suddenly understanding the vulnerability they had stepped into. Now the stakes had climbed even higher. This was a moment that could fracture everything they had built. Jordan's heart raced, confronted with the reality of his choices. What had he invited into his life? Would the truth forge a path forward or unleash chaos? As tension blossomed, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Staring at the screen, Jordan understood the battle he faced was not simply about integrity, it was about survival. The next chapter of his story wasn't merely a revelation, it was a reckoning. Jordan's thoughts raced as he processed the magnitude of Sophia's revelation. The leak wasn't just some passing gossip. It threatened to dismantle the fragile alliance they'd barely begun to forge and could undo all the progress he had strived for. Panic twined with determination in his chest, igniting an urgency to act. His laptop buzzed ominously, its glare a reminder of the digital world that seemed to so easily unravel his intentions. He took a deep, steadying breath and turned to Sophia, who was visibly grappling with the implications. "We can't let this deter us. If anything, we need to harness this momentum." "Momentum?" she echoed incredulously, her eyes darting between the screen and his face, searching. "You heard what they're saying. They're turning this into a war against you." A flicker of doubt wafted through him. He had hoped their fight was about broader issues, yet his name was now the centerpiece in this chaotic narrative. But deep down, he sensed a shift. Emotions swirling like a tempest in his mind, he narrowed his focus. "We have to be proactive. If they're going to frame this as a personal attack, then we counter it with a unified front. Assemble our own voices. Make it bigger than me." He could see the gears turning in Sophia's mind as she absorbed his words. "You're right. We need to reach out to everyone. Whistleblowers, insiders. Create a comprehensive collection of accounts. Only then can we reveal the systemic nature of what's been happening. We can't just react, we must set the narrative." Their combined resolve transformed the atmosphere from uncertainty to urgency. Each heartbeat felt synchronized with a growing strength within him. As they strategized, he tapped into his innate competencies, the ability to think critically under pressure, to mobilize resources creatively, to frame conversations around truth. This was his moment to step into the role he had been preparing for without even knowing it. Sophia picked up her phone and started sending messages to potential allies within their agency, while Jordan compiled a list of individuals they could reach out to. The clattering of keys provided a rhythmic backdrop to their planning. With every click, they pulled themselves deeper into a reality where silence would no longer stifle their voices. "Jordan," she said suddenly, "this risks a lot. We have to consider the blowback. How do we protect ourselves?" He paused, a torrent of thoughts crashing through his mind. Protect themselves? Wasn't that what had kept countless others silent for so long? We focus on the data and the truth. If we build an unassailable case, then we can withstand whatever they throw at us. Fear can't control us if we walk in unity and strength. As time slipped away, the focus on each strategic move grew sharper. With fresh determination, Jordan reached out to contacts, old friends within the agency who might share their grievances, but had yet to voice them openly. Secrets hidden too long simmered beneath layers of caution. Yet as he navigated these connections, doubt tugged at him. Were they venturing into dangerous territory? Could this spiral out of control? But then a moment of clarity emerged. True transformation often came through the crushing pressure of uncertainty. Could he truly demonstrate to others that courage overrides fear? Just as Sophia finished a call that ended with tentative agreement from a crucial witness, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. "I know what you're planning. You need to stop." The looming threat behind those words sent a chill down his spine, awakening the shadows of doubt he thought he had cast aside. What did they know? What were they capable of? Jordan felt a rising sense of urgency mixed with the shadow of fear, knowing that they were delving deeper into uncharted waters. The path ahead had never been clearer, yet the shadows of his past doubted his ability to persist. What had he truly invited into his life? And would the truth ultimately deepen their divide or bind them together? As he exchanged knowing glances with Sophia, a silent agreement flickered between them. This was only the beginning of a battle that would determine their fates. In that moment, Jordan resolved to confront the shadows, aware that facing the consequences of their mission could redefine him in ways he never anticipated. He just hoped he wasn't too far gone to turn back. What lay ahead would require every ounce of resilience he could muster, a relentless determination to push through the barriers that now threatened to engulf him. The stakes were higher than ever, but the fire within him bristled with purpose. How much was he willing to risk in the name of truth? Would he stand tall to inspire others, or would he succumb to the fears that lurked just out of sight? Fear pressed down like a weight, yet the glimmers of hope sparked ambition within him. The confrontation loomed nearer, and as the needle in his resolve tightened, he heard a voice whisper from within. It was time to face the darkness head-on. Jordan's gaze flicked to the lit screen, words of the veiled threat pulsing in neon against the surrounding darkness. The words bled urgency into his veins. He could almost feel the cold grip of fear tighten around him. He narrowed his focus on Sophia, whose expression reflected the storm brewing inside him. "Do you think they know more than we do?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. Such a question rattled in his mind like a loose marble, rolling towards uncertainty. "They might," Jordan answered, feeling the gravity of their situation as if it had a physical weight, a foreboding presence whispering that they had crossed an invisible threshold. "But that means we adapt. If they're watching, then we should throw them off. Create layers of misdirection while we gather our evidence." Sophia nodded, each breath a measured gauge of their shared resolve. He saw in her a reflection of his own determination, a mirror revealing the strength growing within. Together, they considered all of their vulnerabilities. The walls seemed to close in, yet with each scenario they laid out, Jordan felt an unyielding certainty take root. Their planning turned tactical, transforming fear into a strategy. They approached the web of potential allies with caution, recognizing that every whisper could resonate like a bell tolling in a quiet night. Jordan was surprised to discover how instinctively he maneuvered through the landscape, tapping into an earnest desire for justice. Each connection he made reinforced a burgeoning identity. He wasn't just a participant in this unfolding drama. He was becoming a key player, someone who could influence outcomes. "Let's send our testimony first," he suggested, the idea igniting a flicker in Sophia's eyes. A collective statement highlighting the systemic issues at play, detached from personal narratives. "If we do this right, we make the attack on me a backdrop rather than the focus." As they brainstormed potential individuals who might share similar experiences, Jordan's internal dialogue shifted from self-doubt to a burgeoning leadership ethos. He explored each name on their list, weighing the risks of reaching out against the potential for collective empowerment. But with the growing momentum also came the gnawing edges of vulnerability. His past echoed in his ears, begging for acknowledgement. He was an agent shaped by fear, struggling with the shadows of misplaced ambition and the loss of authenticity. Now, amid the swell of purpose, he had to reckon with memories of moments spent stifling his voice, afraid of repercussions. He couldn't let that happen again. In the midst of their planning, the impending threat loomed larger. Jordan's phone buzzed again and the familiar dread pooled in his stomach. It was a reply from the same unknown number. "This isn't a game. You will regret continuing this." He looked at Sophia. "What if we are in over our heads?" "Regret is part of being alive, Jordan," she replied firmly, her tone steadying his spiraling thoughts. "The regret of silence can be more destructive than confronting this head-on. Remember what we're fighting for." Salt mixed with iron in his veins, her words striking a chord as if they were imbibed with a power he had yet to fully harness. He realized he was ready to lean into the churning inner conflicts. The debate would not just shape his present, but redefine his character. A flicker of what could be true transformation teased the edges of his imagination. Determined to counter the gravity of fear, he felt the threads of possibility weave tighter around their mission. They were not only assembling a coalition, they were reshaping their narrative, a shadowed tapestry illuminated by truth and grit. Jordan stood, resolving quietly to himself. He would not falter. Gathering his strength, he prepared for the next step, sensing the waves of inevitable confrontation growing nearer. The doorbell rang, an insistent sound cutting through the mounting tension in their space. Jordan's heart skipped as he exchanged glances with Sophia, the weight of anticipation heavy in the air. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, a challenge and a commitment woven into her gaze. The fear ebbed slightly, replaced by the charge of imminent confrontation. "Ready as I'll ever be," he declared, steeling himself for who might be on the other side of that door. What awaited them could either bolster their efforts or throw them into chaos. In that fleeting moment he understood. Everything was shifting, and the very act of stepping into the unknown could be the defining moment he had craved. Jordan's breath caught in his throat as he reached for the door, the persistent ringing echoing like an approaching storm. Questions flooded his mind in a torrent, overshadowing the moment. Who would be at their doorstep? An ally or an unexpected adversary? The tension coiled tightly around him, urging him to maintain composure. He turned the handle and slowly pulled the door open. Standing before him was a figure wrapped in shadows, their face obscured by the gallery of evening light intermingling with the remnants of twilight. Jordan instinctively steeled himself, ready to counter any intimidation that may come with the stranger's presence. "Jordan." The voice emerged low and gravelly, sliding smoothly through the air between them. "We need to talk." The man stepped into the dim glow of their apartment, enabling Jordan to see his features more clearly. A scruffy beard, dark hair, and an expression that conveyed urgency mixed with concern. "I'm Marcus. I have information that can help you, but it comes with risks." Jordan carefully examined Marcus, internally dissecting the potential threat and opportunity wrapped within this unexpected visitor. With a whisper of resolve, he let the door close behind him, shutting out the world as he moved toward the living room. Sophia followed close, her eyes darting between the two men. "Information about what?" Jordan questioned, attempting to mask the jitter of apprehension quaking in his limbs. His senses sharpened, tuning into Marcus's every nuance, seeking the truth veiled beneath his cryptic introduction. "I've been keeping tabs on the people you're dealing with," Marcus said, his gaze steady. "They've got eyes everywhere. They've built a surveillance net that can ensnare you if you're not careful." He paused, taking a breath that seemed to carry the weight of countless decisions. "But they've also got weaknesses. Cracks waiting to be exploited. That's where you come in." A surge of adrenaline rippled through Jordan's veins. Here was another layer of complexity, opportunity unfolding before him like pages of an unwritten chapter. "What can we do?" he pressed, keenly aware that every moment spent simmered with peril and possibility. "You need to shift the narrative. There are stories, truths buried beneath those threats you received," Marcus explained, his voice gaining intensity. "People will listen if they feel the authenticity of your fight. You want to confront them? Use their own rules against them." Inspirations ignited within Jordan like sparks transitioning to flame. Complex strategies filled his mind, interlacing his fears with the burgeoning potential of his ambitions. Yet this fire was not without consequence. Would pushing too hard reveal yet another layer of risk, attracting their scrutiny even more vehemently? "What's the next step?" he inquired. A flicker of determination threaded through his tone. Marcus leaned forward, nervous energy rippling beneath his exterior. "You need to align yourself with someone who has clout. They may be in the shadows, but they have influence over the powers you're challenging. A whisper in the right ears can trigger a maelstrom against the oppressors you face." Jordan exchanged a look with Sophia, understanding the gravity of this moment. He felt the foundation of his previous self shudder and shift as the momentum of their purpose soaked deep into his bones. He was not merely a victim now. He was standing at the cusp of becoming a catalyst for change, devising a plan fortified with heart and ferocity. But self-doubt clawed at the edges of his resolve, questioning whether he truly had the fortitude to step into this fierce arena. Was he equipped to carry the burdens laid before him? Could he harness this moment without losing himself? "Who is this person?" Jordan asked, tightening his grip on the edges of the table, feeling grounded by his urge to uncover the dauntless identity needed to confront their mutual adversaries. Marcus snapped his fingers, punctuating the air. "Someone from your past. Someone who has seen your fight and can help amplify your voice." With that revelation, the weight of anticipation shifted to a more profound fear, one that had long rooted inside him. The fear not just of confrontation but of reckoning with a past he had often tried to bury. Great expectations swirled around him, intertwining with the ripple of memories. A reckoning was on the horizon, and how he navigated it would either solidify or shatter the identity he was forging. The door had opened, but now it seemed more like a threshold, into not only a new phase of struggle but also into the depths of who he truly was. Jordan felt an electric pulse of both dread and eagerness thrumming through his veins. If this could reshape everything, he knew the time had come to face his past and embolden his future. This was no longer just about survival. It was about transformation. "What if I'm not ready to confront that person?" he murmured, the fear now fumbling through his resolve. "Then you're already defeated," Marcus responded, his eyes locking onto Jordan's. "But if you are ready to evolve, then the real fight will just begin." Jordan nodded, the weight of the moment settling into place. Exposure awaited and the atmosphere crackled with the promise of monumental change. He inhaled deeply, bracing himself for the journey ahead, dawning in his heart the truth that the defining confrontation with himself was rapidly approaching, and with it, the reckoning of all that had been hidden in the shadows. The challenge loomed, not merely from external opponents, but from an internal battlefield fighting for dominance. Marcus's words echoed in Jordan's mind as he grappled with the implications of confronting his past. It was a path strewn with uncertainty and fear, yet within that dark chasm lay the potential for liberation. He silently questioned what remnants of his former self he would unearth, and whether those shadows would shroud him in guilt or empower him with resolve. "Who do I need to talk to?" Jordan's voice came out steadier than his stomach felt, as he took a step closer to Marcus, reassured by the man's intensity. "Her name is Ava," Marcus replied, his expression shifting to one of familiarity. "You two go way back. She's seen it all. The struggles you've faced, the losses endured. She knows how to navigate these waters better than anyone else. But," he hesitated, gauging the impact of his next words, "you'll need to earn her trust again." Every ounce of excitement was tempered by reality. Ava had been a benchmark in his life, a symbol of resilience. But losing touch with her meant potentially facing the truth about their diverging paths. How had her life evolved while he had been battling his inner demons? If she's as connected as you say, why hasn't she stepped in sooner? Sporting an edge that masked his anxiety, Jordan wrestled with the disappointment settling over him like an unwelcome blanket. "People like her tread carefully," Marcus explained. "The risks she faced forced a distance. Trust is a currency she can't afford to lose." Absorbing this, Jordan felt a new layer of pressure stemming from the need to confront the very essence of his choices. The yearning for redemption mingled with the fear of rejection, an amalgamation of conflicting emotions spiraling through him. "Where do I find her?" The question hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. Jordan was aware he needed clarity, a strategic vision to transcend his inner conflicts. He was walking a tightrope, balancing hope with doubt. "Last I heard, she was working with an advocacy group in the city," Marcus replied, his tone shifting to one of purpose. "They deal with systemic injustices, just your kind of workload. You need to show her you've made changes, that you're ready for the larger fight." A flicker of determination ignited within Jordan as he grappling with his approach. This wasn't just a reconnection. It was a test of his growth, an opportunity to redefine himself in the eyes of someone who had once seen potential in him. "Let's set it up," he urged, urgency coursing through his veins. Marcus nodded, an approving glimmer reflecting in his eyes. "Good. But remember, this isn't a straight path. You will face reaffirming challenges. In her eyes and in the world you've navigated, you'll need to remain authentic, even when confronting the facts of your past." Jordan felt the familiar pang of fear coiling in his stomach again. This wasn't merely about reacquainting himself with someone who understood his battle. It was about dismantling the layers of blame he'd attached to himself over the years. Each step toward Ava required confronting a truth long buried, but it was precisely this excavation that gave him hope. Sophia watched in silence, a beacon of unwavering support. He could feel her gaze urging him toward self-improvement rather than just survival. "I'll do it for me," he murmured, almost as much to himself as to her. Each uttered promise echoed as he prepared himself for what lay ahead. They decided to head into the city when the sun rose, the dawn symbolizing new beginnings. Jordan envisioned stepping out into a world transformed not only by the light, but also by his ambition to change his narrative. He acknowledged the battle ahead, the possibility of Ava rejecting him, the specter of his past looming. But he was ready to embrace it, ready to dig deep and uncover the resilience he had buried under layers of self-doubt. As he lay back against the couch and let exhaustion pull him into slumber, thoughts whirled. What if Ava had moved on? What if his words fell flat, resonating with nothing but echoes of the past? And what if, he pondered, just before slipping into sleep, this is the moment that brings everything together, the catalyst for the change we all are waiting for? The dawn would bring clarity, and he realized the reckoning he craved was not just about confronting Ava, but confronting himself. The crossroads of his identity awaited. When the first rays broke through, illuminating hidden truths with a clarity only a new day could provide, determination washed over Jordan. This was it. A new chapter beckoned. But would he have the courage to turn the page? As the city slowly awakened, he felt a stirring within that had been dormant for far too long, whispering that perhaps this time he could rewrite his own story. The urban landscape of the city sprawled before Jordan, a canvas of concrete and opportunity laced with the pulse of ambition. As he walked toward the advocacy group where Ava worked, his heart thrummed with an intoxicating mix of anxiety and purpose. Each step felt decisively lighter than the weight of the past, propelled forward by the incandescent desire to reclaim his narrative from the shadows. The group was nestled in a vibrant part of town, a hub of activism and social movements flickering with life. Jordan approached the building with a sense of purpose. This time he was no longer just an agent trapped in a maze of systemic issues. He was a man on a mission to confront his past and claim his future. Pushing through the door, he was greeted by familiar sounds. Animated conversations and the clattering of keyboards filled the air. Posters adorned the walls, proclaiming justice and equity with bold declarations. Vibrancy emanated from every corner, awakening a sense of hope that he had long thought extinguished. "Can I help you?" asked a young volunteer at the front desk, eyeing him with tentative curiosity. "I'm looking for Ava Green," he replied, a slight tremor betraying his composed exterior. "She's expecting me." "Just a moment," the volunteer said, disappearing into the maze of cubicles that formed the workspace. A tide of apprehension swept over Jordan. What would he say? Would she notice the development he'd undergone since they last spoke? A few moments later, the volunteer returned, motioning him inside. "She's in that corner office. Go on in." Taking a deep breath, Jordan ventured forward, a knot of nerves tightening in his stomach. He knocked gently. "Ava? Come in." Her voice resonated confidently, inviting him into a world he had once inhabited, now a contender rather than a visitor. Stepping inside, Jordan was met with Ava's familiar silhouette, a beacon of strength and resolve. She had evolved, just as he hoped to. Her expression shifted from surprise to a warm smile that illuminated the room, breaking the tension that had settled thickly around him. "Jordan Rivers," Ava said, surprise dancing within her gaze. "It's been a long time. What brings you here?" "Thank you for seeing me," he started, his voice steady but laced with his vulnerabilities. "I'm here to talk about the fight against injustice I've found myself at the center of, and honestly, I want to learn from you and reclaim my purpose." Her brow furrowed, curiosity and concern mingling as she took a seat. "You know the stakes have only heightened in our world. Are you sure you want this?" "More than ever," he affirmed, grappling with the weight of the moment. "In struggling against my own fears, I've realized there's so much more at stake than just me. I need to confront my past and utilize my position for change." Ava traced patterns on the desk with her fingertips, deliberating. "Change is some heavy burden to carry, Jordan. You've faced so much silence. Have you truly considered what speaking out could invite into your life?" The question sent waves of unease coursing through him. Yet within those depths lay his surge of clarity. "I have," he confessed, intensity burning in his voice. "I won't let fear dictate my actions anymore. I want to be an architect of change, championing justice for those who feel voiceless." He watched as Ava's gaze shifted, searching his eyes for the truth behind his words. This path requires authenticity, resilience, and an understanding of the complex dynamics at play. Are you prepared to confront those complexities? Jordan nodded, feeling the resoluteness brewing within him. He was no longer merely a man reacting. He was now a man leading his own transformation. "I've come to realize that true strength lies in vulnerability and unity. Together, we can forge a narrative that dismantles the very biases that seek to silence us." The moment hung suspended in time as Ava's skepticism softened. "Your conviction speaks loudly, Jordan. Perhaps there's a chance for you to direct this fire." And just like that, the door to a new chapter crackled open, infused with possibilities. Their conversation gravitated toward strategies for mobilizing voices suppressed beneath systemic inequalities, all while threading his past narrative with renewed focus on their shared cause. As they dove deep into his plan, Jordan felt himself awaken, breaking free from old facades he had worn as armor. He was standing not just in front of Ava, but rather, reclaiming the very essence of who he could become, the agent of change willing to advocate fiercely against the tide of injustice. Their dialogue blossomed with fervor, transforming dreams of advocacy into actionable steps. Ava shared her experiences, the lessons she had learned, and the strategies that could amplify their message. By the end of their discussion, Jordan felt an internal shift as they crafted a plan, not simply for his personal narrative but for a broader movement, an awakening that could resonate within the agency he once thought was his battleground. With renewed vigor, he stood to leave Ava's office, each step echoing with purpose. She had ignited in him a profound realization. Confronting animosity and fear was not just about personal redemption. It was a clarion call to advocate for an entire community poised for change. The lights of the city flickered around him as he stepped outside, his heart illuminated with hope. He had crossed into a new reality. The ragged threads of his past were now woven into a vibrant tapestry equipped with purpose and empowerment. Jordan took a moment to breathe in the fresh air, letting the magnitude of his decision resonate through him. Now it was time to act, to rise as a voice championing justice, courage seeping from his every pore. The fight ahead was not without its challenges, but he had found a solid foundation to stand on. It was his moment to embrace everything he had learned, to claim this transformation and let it carry him forward into the light. This time he was equipped not only with determination, but also with legitimacy through the support of individuals like Ava, poised to amplify the truths that could shift the tides of injustice. Thus energized, he resolved to persist not simply for himself, but for every individual queuing along the shadows, waiting for their own moment to step into the light. And in that transformative moment, Jordan understood he had become the architect of his own future, embracing both adversities and triumphs head-on. The story he had long been yearning to tell was finally crystallizing, not just as the narrative of a victim, but as a testament to resilience, strength, and ultimately triumph over adversity. This awakening called him forth. Ready to take on the world and inspire others, he marched forward, commanding his own legacy, a legacy of transformation that began with a single step toward the truth. With a heart swelling with purpose and an unwavering belief coursing through his veins, Jordan was ready to speak louder than ever before. As he took the next step, there was no looking back, and for those who dared to journey alongside him, this fight would redefine not just a narrative, but the very fabric of change. Jordan Rivers was on a mission, not as just an agent of the FBI, but as a true champion of justice in every sense of the word. His journey had transformed into a beacon of hope for those who find their voices entwined in silence, and with his story, he would drive a movement toward the assurance of truth and justice for all. He stepped into the world with renewed confidence and determination, because when one chooses to stand for change, that is when true progress begins. Now was the time to rise, to advocate, and to scream from the rooftops. Transformation is possible, and together, they would rewrite the existing narrative into one filled with promise and resilience. It was time to ignite the fire, both in himself and in all those around him, because only then could the tide truly turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful resolution. This is the moment to show your support for heartfelt journeys of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share.